He slept with 2 women that night. Then he beat up a 3rd woman the night before he got shot.
Facts, truth, facts and truth.
And the truth shall make you free.
Well, joining us now is a terrific American, and we're going to get into it. So buckle up for the thought crimes. It's Vince Everett Ellenson, one of my favorite guests. Vince, welcome to the program. Vince, how should we think about Martin Luther King Jr.?
Well, you know, Charlie, it pains me to say this. I grew up in the typical Black American home where MLK was an icon. My father still has a picture of MLK in my family home in Brownsville, Tennessee. And as a matter of fact, I had an Aunt Jenny. She lived in an old shotgun house with no running water. And she had 2 pictures in that home. And one was of Jesus Christ, the other one was Martin Luther King Jr. So again, I have a history of being Black in America, and it pains me to say the things I'm going to say, but if everything that I've read about Martin Luther King Jr., and again, all of it has come from Democrat Party sources, Democrats, no conservatives here. One book was by David Garrow called Bearing the Cross. Another one by Taylor Branch. He was Bill Clinton's roommate at Yale, called Parting the Waters. Another one by a guy by the name of Jonathan Eeg. He's another very, very liberal Democrat. Ralph Abernathy, Martin Luther King Jr.'s successor and best friend, and Jackie Onassis. They all say the same thing about King. And what they're saying is that he was a despicable man, that he was immoral. And that started me on my journey. But it went further than that with me. On my journey, it took me 7, 8 years to write my first book, The Iron Triangle. I was at the Lorraine Motel doing my research, and they had King's I Have a Dream speech looping. And this was during the time when Colin Kaepernick and all the young Black men were angry inside the NFL, and they were kneeling, and everybody was mad, and George Floyd riots. And I was trying to figure out why they were so angry. I mean, these guys were young, they were attractive, they were supermen, they were rich. And I had heard Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech 1,000 times. But the great writer Thomas Wolfe said, you'll see a thing 1,000 times before you see it once. And this was one of my Thomas Wolfe moments. I heard Martin Luther King Jr. say something in that speech that I understood was a poison pill that was causing so many problems in America. He said in that speech, 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro is still not free. That is a lie. I was born free. And according from John Locke in the Second Treaty of Government, my freedom is a gift from God. It's an unalienable right. It is irrevocable, non-transferable, and unsellable. Jesus Christ said that he who the Son has freed is free indeed. So Jesus Christ affirmed what John Locke was talking about. In the book of Galatians, it said, for freedom, Christ came to set you free and submit yourself not to slavery. But King was telling us we had to come to Washington, D.C. for our freedom. And 5 times in that speech, he said we were not free. And at the end of that speech, he had this old refrain. He said, on some certain day, we'll be free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. That speech turned the Declaration of Independence on its head, because our Declaration said that God gave us our freedom. And when King George said, no, I give you your freedom, we said, well, we'll see about that. Come and try to take it. And that whole concept of freedom led us to our Declaration and to our freedom here in America. But King contradicted the Declaration, and he contradicted Jesus Christ when he said that we were not born free. So he said in that speech, he said, when will we be satisfied? He said, we will never be satisfied, not until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. That was a fancy way of saying never. And our Christian religion tells us that Jesus Christ says that my peace I leave with you. So Martin Luther King is saying we will never be satisfied until America does certain things, which means we're taking our peace from Jesus Christ and giving it to Washington, D.C. again. He said he had a dream that one day his 4 little children not be judged by the color of their skin, but the contrary of their character. Well, what's wrong with the color of my skin? I'm going to be walking around some racist, begging him not to judge me by the color of my skin? My Christian religion says I'm not to be concerned about how any man views me. I'm supposed to be concerned about how I view him and how Jesus Christ views me. I'm supposed to love him no matter what he says, no matter what he does. I love him. If he lies on me, I tell the truth on him. If he disrespects me, I respect him. But King said that we were to walk around and dream about a day that some racist white man will look at me and not be offended by the color of my skin. Never me, never me. There's this story I heard about King where he said he was at this hotel inside of Tallahassee. He was trying to segregate it. They called the police on him. And when the police asked him, what did he want? He said, I want my dignity. Well, see, I hate that story. Why? God gave me my dignity. Martin Luther King Jr. is going to let a $2 hotel clerk take his dignity from him. And he's telling black people that the only way you can have your dignity is if white America gives it to you. This is why we're at the bottom of every socioeconomic statistic here in America right now. In the book of Corinthians, they say there are 11 people when I enter the kingdom of God. One of them, the last one, is the extortionist. What is an extortionist? A person that uses coercion, threats, boycotts, sit-ins to get what they want. Our Christian religion says we're supposed to change the hearts. We're not supposed to use the gun of government. I'm gonna put a gun in your head and make you give me what I want. And that is the reason why right now, Time Magazine said that America is more segregated now than it was in 1960. Bobby Rush stood on the congressional floor and said our public schools are more segregated now than they were in 1960. What did he achieve? The black family destroyed. The black church is apostate. The black economy is destroyed. The black politician is no good. He turned the black church over to the Democrat Party. We got 5 times more men in prison. The only thing Martin Luther King Jr. did was teach black people to vote for a Marxist Democrat Party. And that's why he has that statue, and that's why they love him.
Vince, stay right there. We are just getting warmed up, and I want to compliment you on your courage, because you're not supposed to even talk about this. You're not supposed to ask questions, but you hit it perfectly. Has Black America, have they objectively gotten richer, happier? Have their lives improved significantly the more that we have worshiped MLK? I want you to think about that, because the numbers say no. We're actually more segregated. Are blacks off better today? No. And maybe it starts with challenging the myth, questioning the story. Exactly. In fact, part of the myth of MLK, I admire a colorblind, nonviolent preacher who tried to bring people together. But the reality is much murkier than that, cloudier, especially when you learn about the man. Just keep riffing and dive into that. Black America is more segregated, poorer actually on average. By the fruit, you will judge them. What has been the fruit? The more we have elevated MLK.
Exactly. Well, you know, when you look at the fruit, the Bible says the tree is known by the fruit it bears. If and that statement was made when Jesus told his disciples, "I'll tell you how to identify a false prophet." He said, "Look at his fruit. Don't watch what he does. Don't watch what he says. You watch what he produces." And he said, "You cannot get good fruit from a bad tree, or bad fruit from a good tree. The tree and its fruit be out his own." And if the fruit is bad, the tree had to be bad. And the tree is MLK and the Civil Rights Movement. Martin Luther King Jr. was given the first Margaret Sanger Award in 1966. Who was Margaret Sanger? She started Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood killed 65 million children by 2022. 25 million of them white. Martin Luther King Jr. got the Margaret Sanger Award for helping to set up abortion clinics in the black community. It was Martin Luther King Jr. that asked, that demanded that LBJ put the man in house clause in welfare. Yeah, he demanded it. LBJ wanted to use the federal government to put the black man back in charge of his family. King said no. David Garrow writes about this in his book, Bearing the Cross. They said put the man in house clause in welfare so that if the man is in the house, the woman gets no money and he had to be run out before she gets a dime. In one generation, the black community went from 80% of their children being born in wedlock to 80% being born out of wedlock. Why? MLK's fingerprints were all over it. You know, and then when you start getting into the crazy stuff he did in his personal life, the orgies, the rapes, it all comes together that there was something extraordinarily wrong here. And he's been elevated for what? You know, the FBI said that he's a Marxist. John F. Kennedy told him he needed to get the communists out of his group. He told him he had Bayard Rustin, Stanley Levinson, Jack O'Dell. They were communists. In these books, they say that the communists were the ones that bankrolling the whole civil rights movement. Jack O'Dell was the executive director of the SCLC. Jack O'Dell was a full-fledged communist. Stanley Levinson was the one that put him there. Stanley Levison was a communist. Bayard Rustin was a communist. And when John F. Kennedy told him to get them out, he told John F. Kennedy that he would. He lied to him, and that's when Hoover started putting the wiretaps on him. So all of this stuff comes together, and you look at where the Black community is. In 1956, the Comintern gave their spies in the Civil Rights Movement a job. They said, we want you to make the Black community a replica of the Soviet bloc. They've been successful. The Black community is a third world nation in the United States of America. We have dictator worship, apostate ministry. We have one-party rule, abject poverty, violence, and crime. We are just like the Soviet Union right before the Berlin Wall fell. They accomplished their mission. And then the white people from the Civil Rights Movement jumped from the Civil Rights Movement into the Democrat Party and made the Democratic Party a Marxist organization in 1972. They did everything they planned to do, and it came from the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement didn't have anyone except for the communists in the United States of America. Black people are worse off behind the Civil Rights Movement, and until we come to that conclusion, until we take all of this stupidity and ignorance and throw it away and pull it up root and stem, we'll always be at the bottom of everything in America.
So there's many directions we can go here, and I want to just emphasize one of them. We know for certain that MLK, being a minister, was a womanizer and had multiple 40-plus affairs. I want to make sure that is mentioned. Now, that's not necessarily a disqualification, but it should make pause before we turn that into a national holiday. But there's also another accusation around Martin Luther King. This guy won a Pulitzer Prize for running an MLK bio by David Garrow, as you say. So the accusation is essentially based on a FBI document, which could be fabricated. The FBI lies. So I will put that an asterisk on that because I don't believe everything the FBI says. But this is a Pulitzer Prize winner on the King biography. Said, quote, "A group met in a hotel room and discussed which women among the parishioners would be suitable for natural and unnatural sex acts. When one of the women protested that she did not approve of this, the Baptist minister immediately and forcibly raped her." The type summary states, parenthetically, saying that, quote, "Martin Luther King looked on, laughed, and offered advice while the woman was raped." Vince, your reaction?
Well, I believe it because in Ralph Abernathy's book, "And the Walls Came Tumbling Down," he talked about the night before King died after he gave the mountaintop speech. And he said that he went over, they said that they went to Reverend Benjamin Hook's house for dinner. That was a cover story, but that wasn't true. He said they actually went to this one woman's house and King slept with her. Then they went to the Lorraine Motel and he met with the first female Black senator from Georgia. Her name was last name was Powers. They said the King slept with her. While there, they say his second wife, her name was Dorothy Cotton, she worked for the ACLC, found out what happened, and she confronted King, and Ralph Abernathy said they got to fighting in the hotel room, and King beat her up. Now, this is what Ralph Abernathy said. This is not the FBI. So this looks like this was part of King's behavior. He slept with 2 women that night, then he beat up a 3rd woman the night before he got shot. So, and about these FBI files, I'm going to tell you, Charlie, why I believe them. You and I know that they have the suicide letter in these FBI files, where the FBI sent King a note with sex tapes in it, telling them that they were going to release all this stuff if he didn't commit suicide. If these guys were going to lie about something, they would have lied about that. They would have took that suicide letter out, or they would have redacted it or something. If you're going to put a letter in the file that says you told a guy to kill himself, you're going to put everything in the file. So if you read the books of the people that know King best, you'll see that this type of behavior that the FBI is talking about was something that they all knew he did and that they all validated. So yes, I believe it. And again, a tree is known by the fruit it bears. A fish rots from the head down. Look at the condition of the Black community, and you'll see that it was led by a bunch of liars, perverts, psychopaths, and anti-Christian bigots. And one last thing, King was excommunicated from the Black church in 1961. So people think that King was a Southern Black preacher. He was excommunicated from the National Baptist Convention in 1961 because he tried to take over the National Baptist Convention for the Civil Rights Movement. They had a bishop by the name of Bishop Jackson that didn't want this to happen. So at the convention in Kansas City in 1961, King and his boys decided to try to force a floor vote on the floor. They got into a fist fight and they killed a preacher on the floor at the convention in 1961. They had to call in the riot police. And the mayor of Kansas City came in and shut the thing down. King lost the floor vote. And when he lost the floor vote, they excommunicated King from the National Baptist Church. So what did King do? He got about 10% of his libertine, perverted preachers, and they started their own religion. And it's called the Progressive National Baptist Convention. Look it up. That is a sect that Raphael Warnock belongs to. They believe in abortion, LGBTQ, all kind of crazy stuff. They are an apostate organization. It's called the Progressive National Baptist Convention. People still thought the King was part of the National Baptist Convention because the National Baptist Convention was in the name. No, he was excommunicated from the Black church. And most people don't know it. So Martin Luther King Jr. was excommunicated from the Black church, got the Margaret Sanger Award for setting up abortion clinics in the Black community, and put the man out clause in welfare that basically destroyed the Black family. Nevertheless, he is being celebrated. And if you go to his monument right now in Washington, D.C., and look for anything on that monument, with all the nice quotes and everything, there's nothing on that monument that mentions God anywhere. It doesn't even mention that he was a reverend. Wow. You know why? Not a mistake. That was a confession. They knew exactly who they were. They were using God for power.
So Vince, one part I want to explore with you is that when MLK was alive, his approval rating was rather low, right near 30%. So his contemporaries did not think very highly of him. In fact, even in the decades that followed, it was a big lift to get it to become a federal holiday. Now he has an approval rating near 96 to 98%. How is that possible, Vince? It's one of the most popular people. He's as real as Aslan from Chronicles of Narnia or Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. Only something fake and fictitious could get a 96% approval rating, and it turns out that what we think of as MLK is largely a fable, is a legend, is a myth. Vince, your thoughts?
Well, the people of America are very good people. And when King got shot and he got murdered at the time, he's 39 years old. He had the wife and the beautiful wife and the 4 small children. Your heart goes out to him. And then they took the COINTELPRO tapes, which of course, I don't know a lot of people know this. The FBI did not release this information on King. They had it sealed. And a bunch of young hippies broke into the FBI office and stole the COINTELPRO tapes, files, and then turned them over to the Washington Post. And the Washington Post printed some of them. And so a federal judge has taken these files and he sealed them for 50 years until 2027. So in 2027, we'll know a lot more. But in that time, it gave the Marxists and the communists in the press a lot of time to do a lot of PR for their fallen saint. And they took advantage of it. You already know this, Charlie, that the press is filled of Marxists and communists and socialists, and King was their guy. Look, LBJ had just passed the Great Society. He had Medicaid, welfare, you name it. And that wasn't enough for Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. getting ready to do the Poor People's March. And he wanted $30 billion back then for free housing, free food, free medical care, free everything. He was going to take 1 million people in Washington, D.C. and shut it down. LBJ didn't give enough. King wanted more. And he took the Black community and he turned them from a group of people that depended on God to a people that depended on government. I'm the type of guy that says, when they say that Black people are victims and they're oppressed, I say, I'm an heir of Jesus Christ. I'm a child of God. You cannot oppress me. I'm an heir of Jesus Christ. I'm a child of God. I cannot be a victim. When they talk about white supremacy, I said, I'm an heir of Jesus Christ and a child of God. Show me the white man superior to me, and we'll put that to the test. See, I don't walk around asking a man for my freedom, as King was doing. I defy him to come and try to take my freedom from me. God gave it to me. It is mine. And if you come and try to take my freedom from me, I have the right to defend myself. So if you don't like me because of the color of my skin, that's your problem. If you put your hands on me, you're going to have another one. And if anybody ever comes and tries to take something from me, hurt me, or hurt my family, I got two things that'll get you off me. And that's Jesus and my 38. I hope you don't try it.
Vince, you bring up a very powerful point here that I want to emphasize, which is we've largely thought of MLK as a hologram. And I want to be very morally clear to the audience. It's actually a hologram that it makes sense. Again, you have a guy that allegedly was arguing for a colorblind, merit-based society. That's the country I want to live in. The quote that he's best known for, content of character, color of the skin, was actually not a good summary of his worldview or his actions or his he didn't even write that speech. And
dream about communists.
Yeah, no, that's what's critical. And I will also have to say, I dream of a day where people are judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Well, MLK, we're now judging you by the content of your character. We're using your own rule. And we're not seeing great character, right, Vince? 30 seconds.
Well, see here it is, Charlie. This is an aspirational view that we all believe in. But Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to use government to make it happen. And the government is not designed for that. This is for the pulpit. This is for the schools. This is for the family. This is for us as individuals. He wanted to use the government to come and put a gun to people's heads and tell them you're going to do this and you're going to accept people, and you're going to do that, or we're going to put you in jail, or we're going to fine you, or we're going to shut you down, or we're going to close you down. And you see, it did not work.
I want to I'm going to read a quote here from MLK. Now, understandably, towards the end of his life, before he was assassinated, he became more and more of a cheerleader for redistributionism, of property confiscation. I'm going to read this quote. White Americans must recognize that justice for black people cannot be achieved without radical changes in the structure of our society. Time out. This is after the Civil Rights Act. And this is after the Voting Rights Act. And this is after the Great Society. Vince, MLK was not satisfied. He was a revolutionary that was pushing for, quote, radical changes in the structure of our society. What did he mean by that? That was in 1967.
It was Marxism, just completely. He had taken the black church and he used it as a political vehicle. He wasn't talking about changing it through Christianity. Jesus Christ told us to change people by changing their hearts. He never talked about using the Roman army to change the minds of the Jewish people or anybody. He said, you have to let your light shine so men might see your good works and glorify the Father which is in heaven. King said no. He was like Vito Corleone in The Godfather, you know, when it first came on, and Michael told Kay the story of how Vito took this big bodyguard by the name of Luca Brasi down and put the gun to the head of the band leader and told him either his brains or his name was going to be on the contract to let his godson go. Well, Martin Luther King says, I want to eat a hamburger down south. Man says no. He says, I'm going to go get the federal government. I'm going to put a gun in your head. If Vito Corleone was violent, how was King not violent? Charlie, I'm telling you, I want you beat up. I'm not going to beat you up. I'm going to hire somebody to beat you up. Am I a violent man? Of course I am. So King says, I want this and I want that. White folks down south say, I won't give it to you. I'm going to get the federal government to put a gun in your head and put you in jail if you don't give it to me. How is that not using violence? It was a game. It was a game of power. He used the black church for power. You never heard him talk about baptism. You never heard him talking about healing the sick. You never heard him talking about forgiveness, forbearance. We're supposed to talk about loving one another, forgiving one another, forbearance to one another. These jokers talk about reparations. We want more money for health care. We want you to give us that. If not, we're going to shut you down. We're going to change the law. We're going to riot. We're going to burn stuff up. No. My job is to tell you I love you. I'll help you. I'll do anything you need me to do. If you need a good doctor, I'll find you one. You need a good preacher, I'll help you get one. You need a job, I'll help you find one. But don't you take my love and my kindness for weakness. See, the reason why so many young black men went to the Nation of Islam back in the 70s and the 60s was because Martin Luther King Jr. told them that Christianity was about laying down and getting the hell beat out of you. Allowing white folks to beat you and stomp you and rape your children and rape your wives. He ran so many young black folks out of Christianity because they said, I am not going to do that. Because it was a bastardized Southern slave master plantation version of Christianity that was not true. You are supposed to protect what you love. You're supposed to tend to what you love. The first concept of love is do no self-harm and don't let nobody harm anything that you love. But instead, we were letting them beat us, kill us, rape us. And a lot of young black folks love Christianity because of it, and that is a lie.
So Vince, talk about the damage, because we have to be honest, Black America is not doing well today. Talk about the damage of the welfare state and how MLK's narrative and political activism led to the modern welfare state.
Yeah, David Garrow, again, he wrote about this in his book. Patrick Moynihan wrote this great study called the Moynihan Report. It was legendary. Patrick Moynihan proved that welfare was destroying the black family. He saw that black men were working, but the family was being more destroyed and more people were getting on welfare. And he said what's happening is these young girls that are getting pregnant aren't getting married anymore. So he told LBJ, we got to cut this out or the black family is going to be destroyed. So he said, what we need to do is take the federal government and put the black man back in charge of his family. LBJ was all for it. But LBJ, being the politician, said, you got to go and sell this to the civil rights community. So McGeorge Bundy was over the Ford Foundation at that time. He told Moynihan that we are sponsoring a retreat for the civil rights community. Come with me down there and present your findings to them. McGeorge Bundy, Moynihan went down there, met with Martin Luther King Jr. and the members of the civil rights community. According to David Garrow, McGeorge Bundy said it's a wonder Moynihan got out of that room alive. They called him everything but a child of God, cussed him out, called him a racist. Moynihan goes back to LBJ and said, man, these people are crazy. We can't have nothing to do with them. LBJ said we got to do what they said do. They came back and met with LBJ, and the feminists in the movement said, instead of taking the federal government to put the man back in charge of his family, we need to use it to get the man out because marriage is just like slavery. And instead of putting and fixing the welfare state where women could get welfare if they got married, they changed it to where if they caught a man in the house, she could get no help. And in one generation, the black community went from 80% of their children in wedlock to 80% being born out of wedlock. And they put the man in-house clause in welfare, and it destroyed the black family. And Martin Luther King Jr.'s fingerprints were all on it. And Ralph Abernathy wrote, "In the walls came tumbling down." He said that in the late 70s, he went to the black people in the civil rights in Congress and showed them how welfare was destroying the black community, how it was keeping 3 generations of black people in poverty. And Ralph Abernathy wrote this in his book. He said, and something curious happened. It pleased them to have 2 and 3 generations of black people locked in poverty because that's how they could control them. Ralph said that they were pushing segregation because this is how they could keep all black people in the inner city and could keep their positions of power in government. And that's when Ralph Abernathy said that he supported Ronald Reagan for president in 1980. So it's always been part of their job to keep black people poor, ignorant, under their control, and voting for the Democrat Party. In my first book, The Iron Triangle, I said that the black preacher, the black politician, and the black civil rights worker are conduits between rich white liberals and the Democrat Party, and their job is to do one thing, make sure that the black community votes for the Democratic Party by hook or by crook. And they've been doing it well for the last 40, 50 years. But there's a change coming now, Charlie. You've seen the polls. About 61% of black people now support Joe Biden. And there's a panic in the Democrat Party. And that 61%, it dropped from 90% in 2020 to about 61% now. And that's happening because of people like you, Candace Owens, me, Officer Brandon Tatum, us going out there every day and grinding and grinding and grinding. It ain't the GOP. You know that.
And so Vince, I have to just say, so when I said that we were going to do this MLK segment, I'd say the number one piece of critical feedback I received, and that's fine, is Charlie, you're going to turn off black voters if you dare tell the truth about MLK. How should I respond to that, Vince?
Black people will love you for it because the truth is the truth. Who can hide from it? You're telling the truth. They're going to research everything we said today, Charlie, and they're going to say, I will be damned. It's correct. It's right. Check it all. It's the truth. Black people aren't any better. What are you celebrating? The fact that
I'm sorry. I think it's so incredibly bigoted and racist that you like when someone says, "Oh, you know, you're going to upset the balance of blacks coming our way if you dare tell the truth." No, what kind of silly, strange, bizarre, bigoted argument? In fact, I think it's the opposite, Vince. What I've learned over the last couple of years is pursuing the tough topics actually builds our movement. It strengthens our movement because the truth will set you free.
Charlie, they're afraid of the truth. They're liars. You know, I've been saying since you know me that the Democratic Party is controlled by a cabal of perverts, liars, psychopaths, and anti-Christian bigots. They lie. How do you know a Democrat is lying? His lips are moving. That's how they keep us under control. They lie. They want to tell black people that white conservative Christians are their enemy. No, the white liberal is your enemy. The white conservative Christian will do nothing to hurt or harm you. It is that white liberal, like Malcolm X says, that is the enemy of all mankind. They are atheists, they're Marxists, they're full of hate and envy, and they use people for power. And they get some type of weird charge out of seeing pain. They have to kill people, they have to harm people. The greatest trick the devil ever played on mankind was to convince us that he no longer exists. The devil exists and he rests his head at the DNC. That's where he lays his head. That's where he puts all of his clothes. He lives there. And these are the evilest people ever walked the face of this earth. And they use MLK and all of those perverts with him. There's a chapter in my book, 25 Lies. One of the lies is that the civil rights leaders were moral people. They were not. James Bevel, the guy that was in control of all of the marching and all of the organizing. James Bevel went to jail for raping his daughters. You saw what Jesse Jackson did after King got assassinated. He slipped away, got a T-shirt, put fake blood on it, went on every TV show the next day and said he held Martin Luther King Jr. while he died, saying, "Dr. King, can you hear me? Dr. King, can you hear me?" And that Dr. King told him to take over the civil rights movement. Yeah, that's what Jesse Jackson did. This is, and Ralph Abernathy wrote about it, and the walls came tumbling down. He wrote about what Jesse Jackson did and told how they felt about it. Yeah, when you start talking about Bayard Rustin, went to jail for having sex with two men in a parked car. He was a communist. You can go on down the line, and you'll find that all of these guys, something was wrong with them. They would have orgies with 20 men and 20 women in a hotel room. They get drunk. David Guerrero wrote about this situation where Dr. King and Clara Ward, the black gospel singer, bought this white prostitute named Gail, took her up to a hotel room. Dr. King called one of his pastor friends, "Hey man, I got this white girl, come on, let's have some fun." And Gail told the FBI about how they ran trains on her all night long, how they were drunk, and it was the worst orgy she'd ever been in. This man is supposed to be saving prostitutes. This man is supposed to be healing them and freeing their souls. This man is supposed to be baptizing every communist, every socialist, every atheist that came around Martin Luther King Jr. was supposed to have been changed. Instead, he was engaging in the foul behavior. And now look at the black community. At the bottom of every socioeconomic statistic in the world. Why? Because we followed a bunch of liars, hypocrites, and psychopaths. And you will not be blessed doing such a thing. A tree is known by the fruit it bears. Look at our fruit. If the fruit is rotten, the tree is rotten. And the tree is Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights community.
I typically wouldn't put my guests on the spot to respond to this, but it's so overwhelming where the shallow criticism people are launching towards me is Charlie is racist, Charlie is racist, Charlie is racist because we're talking about this. Vince, how would you respond to that?
These are people that like to see black people in their place. See, they like to see us begging white people. They like to see us on our knees. They like to see us crying. A educated free man cannot be a slave. A man that believes that his power comes from God, comes from Jesus Christ, comes from his own self, that's independent and free, cannot be a slave. And unless you pull all of that out of him, he will not vote for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was a part of slavery from 1800 to 1860. It was a part of Jim Crow from 1860 to it was a part of the Confederacy from 1860 to 1865. It was a part of Jim Crow from 1865 to 1970. They've always gained their power by beating down black people. And now they're the party of socialism, the party of Marxism, party of abortion, party of transgenderism. They have to make you a victim in order to succeed. And the way they make us victims is to tell us that we have to depend on them and beg them for everything. And that's the civil rights movement, and that's Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. marched, begged, and was beaten, asking government to feed, clothe, and protect him. A man like me that says, I don't need you to feed me, to clothe me, or protect me is a problem for them. They need to make me like they made George Floyd, who is a prototypical black man. He and Martin Luther King Jr. are the prototypical black men. I can't do for myself. I gotta go to government. I'm scared. Please protect me. The police are chasing me. What's my remedy to this? Take my gun and hand it over to the police who's chasing me. Why don't you just be expeditious and blow your own damn brains out? Crying, afraid. They stink in my nostrils. A real man is not afraid of anything. 365 times in the Bible, God ordered us to fear not. And therefore, to walk around here saying, I'm afraid in my country, he says that I got you. You ain't got to beg for nothing. I am your father. The cattle on 1,000 hills belong to me. And we're begging for the scraps that fall off their table? Never me. So when a man stands up and when a man says, I take care of myself, I don't need your help, it scares the hell out of them. And they don't want black people to hear this. They want black people to say, that black man crazy. You can't do for yourself. You have to ask us. You have to beg us. Get back on the plantation, boy. Well, when they start thinking like me, they're off of it. And they stay off it for good. And that's why the Democratic Party is going to start losing, because black people are getting off their plantation and they're going to be free.
Let's end the show on that, Vince. The call to action 2024. It's time to get Black America to keep getting this message out. Leave the Democrat Party. Embrace the principles that you actually at a fundamental level believe. Make the pitch for 2024. Trump, Biden, make the pitch. 2 minutes remaining.
Man, Joe Biden is the worst president since James Buchanan. He has allowed drag queens to go into the schools and shake their behinds in your children's faces. He wants your children to transition without the parents' permission. He wants to put pornography in the schools. He wants to murder children up to the 9th month. He wants to cut off little breasts, the breasts of little girls and call them little boys, castrate little boys and call them little girls. He started 2 wars. He acted like a coward in Afghanistan. He has expanded our budget by 50% from $4 trillion to $6 trillion. He's put us in more debt. You can't buy a house. The money that you make doesn't go nearly as far as it used to go. Every American now is spending $1,000 more a month than they were spending when Trump was president. Biden has to go. If you vote for Joe Biden and vote for the Democratic Party, you might as well call yourself insane. Because what is insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Things were better under Trump before, they'll be better under Trump. Now, the world will get back in line, America will get back in line, and we'll be a freer, better nation again. Vote, but vote Trump this time.
Love it. Vince, God bless you, man. Thank you for your courage. We'll have you back on soon. People are emailing us like crazy. They're buying your books. Vince, you were terrific. God bless you. Thanks so much.
Charlie, thank you for your bravery. Thank you for having me on. As long as you and I get out there, we're going to keep this thing going, brother.
God bless you. Thank you.
You can't handle the truth.